Before there is a road, before there is a name, before there is any trace of the world you know, there is the river. It moves without urgency. Wide, brown, and ancient, beyond reckoning, it does not rush toward any destination. It simply is. A living thing so vast that standing on its bank, you cannot see the other side. The horizon is not a line of land. It is a wall of green, an unbroken cathedral of trees rising from the waterline into a sky so blue it seems painted. This is the Amazon, the greatest river system on Earth, the largest tropical rainforest ever to exist. And somewhere inside it, far from any city, any hospital, any paved road, people are waking up. The light arrives slowly here. It does not flood in the way it does in open country. It filters, it descends in thin golden shafts through the triple canopy above, catching the morning mist that rises from the water's surface like breath. The air is thick and warm and alive with the sound of things unseen. The howler monkey announces the day from somewhere deep in the canopy. The macaw cuts a red line across a pale sky, and beneath it all, steady and insistent, the river moves. This is a world that operates on its own time, according to its own logic. Here, the Amazon is not a backdrop. It is not a setting. It is the entire architecture of existence. The road, the market, the highway, the clock. None of these things govern life in the deep forest. What governs life here is water, season, current, and the ancient knowledge of how to live inside one of the most demanding and most generous environments on the planet. The day begins at the water's edge. Before the sun has fully cleared the tree line, the wooden canoe is already moving. The man at the stern works the paddle with quiet efficiency, reading the current the way another man might read a clock. He knows this river the way you know the rooms of your own house in the dark, by feel, by memory, by a knowledge that has no need to announce itself. His name is known to everyone within 3 hours of paddling in any direction. Beyond that, the world grows abstract. In the comunidades ribeirinhas, the riverside communities that scatter themselves along the tributaries and flooded forests of the basin, the canoe is everything. It is the car, the bus, the delivery truck, the ambulance. A child goes to school by canoe. A woman goes to the market by canoe. A man travels to visit his brother by canoe, navigating turns in the river that have no names on any map but are known to him as intimately as his own name. To take away the canoe is to take away the legs of an entire civilization. The Ribeirinho home is built on stilts. This is not an architectural choice. It is a fact of survival. During the flood season, enchente, the river rises as much as 12 meters, swallowing the forest floor, climbing the trunks of trees, turning the jungle into an inland sea. The houses must be above it, and so they are, raised above the waterline on thick wooden poles, their floors a few precious meters above a river that will, without question, attempt to enter. The women hang laundry on lines strung between the pilings. Children fish from their own porches, dropping lines into water where last month there was only mud. Life here is not simple in the romantic sense. It is demanding. Water must be collected and filtered. Food must be grown, hunted, or fished. Medicine is either carried in by boat or improvised from the forest, where generations of knowledge about plants and their properties is as real and reliable as any pharmacy. Electricity, where it exists, often comes from a small solar panel or a generator that runs for a few hours in the evening. For many communities, it does not exist at all. The night belongs to the stars and to the oil lamp, and the conversations that happen by their light. And yet, in the early morning, with the river silver and the forest just beginning to sing. It is difficult to call this a life of deprivation. It is a life of a different order, a life in which the rhythms of the natural world have not been overridden, but inhabited. A life in which people know exactly where they are. The knowledge lives in the hands. Watch a woman weave a basket from acai palm leaf, her fingers moving without hesitation through a pattern that has no written instruction. Watch a grandfather show a child of 8 how to read the color of the water. Brown means the main river. Black means the Igapo, the flooded forest, where the fish gather in the shadow of submerged trees. Watch a father gut and prepare a tambaki, a great silver fish pulled from the river at dawn, while his daughter watches every movement, learning without being taught, absorbing what she will one day do herself. This is how culture moves in the Amazon, not through institutions, through hands, through proximity, through the patient repetition of daily life witnessed by the next generation. Family here is not a unit. It is a network, extended in every direction. Aunts, cousins, godparents, neighbors who have become family through decades of proximity and mutual survival. The compadrio system, a web of spiritual kinship built around the ritual of baptism, extends a person's family far beyond blood. Your child's godfather is not a guest at a ceremony. He is an obligation, a protector, a second father. These bonds are taken seriously because they have to be. Out here, when the river floods, when the child is sick, when the boat engine fails 30 kilometers from anywhere, the network is what saves you. The festivals arrive with the Catholic calendar, but they dress themselves in something older. The Festa Junina in June. The patron saint celebrations in dozens of tiny chapels, each one hand-built, each one the spiritual center of a community that may number no more than 40 or 50 souls. The men brew cachaça. The women cook manicoba, a slow-cooked dish made from the poisonous leaves of the manioc plant, rendered safe only after a week of boiling. A preparation that requires knowledge, patience, and trust in the process. The music plays from a battery-powered speaker lashed to a tree, and people dance on packed earth beside a river that has been watching these same celebrations for longer than anyone can remember. The indigenous communities who have lived in this forest for thousands of years carry a knowledge so deep that it constitutes a separate science. Their relationship with the plants, the animals, the water, and the seasons is not spiritual metaphor. It is applied, functional, precise. They are the original cartographers of this world, and they have been reading it accurately since long before the first European ship entered the mouth of the river and called it Discovery. The forest provides, but the forest is under pressure. For centuries, the Ribeirinho economy was built on extraction, rubber, Brazil nuts, fish, timber, and on a relationship with the river that was cyclical and self-regulating. The flood brought nutrients. The dry season revealed the beaches where turtles laid their eggs and the sandbars where crops could be planted. People took what they needed. The forest recovered. The river continued. That equilibrium is now strained by forces that arrive from far outside the forest. Illegal logging operations push deeper into protected areas each year, moving faster than enforcement can follow, leaving behind a silence where there was once a canopy. Gold miners, garimpiros, poison rivers with mercury in their search for deposits in the riverbed, contaminating the fish that entire communities depend upon for protein. The effects are not abstract. Children in riverside villages show elevated mercury levels in their blood. Mothers who have eaten from the same rivers their whole lives now face choices that their grandmothers never imagined having to make. The cattle frontier advances from the south and east, clearing forest at a scale visible from space, changing the rainfall patterns that the entire basin relies upon. When enough forest disappears, the rain that the Amazon generates for itself, the rios voadores, the flying rivers of moisture that travel thousands of kilometers across the continent, begins to falter. The forest does not just need the rain. In a very real sense, the forest is the rain. The political economy of all this destruction is complicated in ways that resist easy villainous narratives. The logger may be a contractor working for a landowner who is himself operating under a system of land titling and credit that incentivizes clearing. The garimpero may be a man from a poor northeastern city who came to the Amazon because there was nowhere else to go. The cattle rancher may be serving a global market for beef that sits comfortably far from the smoke rising over the forest. Blame, diffused so widely, becomes almost impossible to assign, which is precisely how the destruction continues. For the people living inside this, the economics are personal and painful. A young man who might have become a fisherman watches the fish stocks decline in rivers his grandfather fished with abundance. He has the knowledge, he has the skill, he has the desire. What he no longer has is the fish. A family that harvested Brazil nuts for generations finds that the mature trees, each one needing decades to reach productive age, are disappearing faster than new ones grow to replace them. The economics of patience cannot compete with the economics of immediate extraction. The choice many face is not philosophical. It is practical and immediate. Stay and find a way, or leave. Many leave. The cities of Manaus, Belém, and Santarém have grown enormously in recent decades, swelled by a migration from the forest that brings people in search of schools, hospitals, and economic opportunity that the river cannot offer. This is not a failure of will. It is a rational response to impossible conditions, to the compound pressure of declining resources, inadequate infrastructure, and a national political culture that has historically valued the Amazon more as a resource to be liquidated than as a civilization to be sustained. And it creates in those who go a grief that takes years to name. The grief of a person who has left a place that was not just home, but identity. The city receives them, uses them, and offers them almost nothing of what they have surrendered. The communities that have found ways to resist this logic of departure are, in many cases, the ones that have organized around the forest itself, establishing extractive reserves, managing fisheries through community agreements, finding markets for products that are worth more standing than felled. The Castanha Cooperative that connects a network of nut harvesting families to buyers in São Paulo and abroad. The fishing community that has banned certain gear types and certain seasons to allow the stocks to recover, enforcing the rules themselves because the government cannot or will not. The Women's Association that processes and sells acai under a label that carries a story about where it came from and who harvested it. These are not romantic solutions. They are fragile, contested, and chronically underfunded. But they demonstrate something important, that the knowledge required to live well in this place is also, in the right conditions, the knowledge required to protect it. Those who stay do so with a fierce attachment that has no simple explanation. They stay because the river is in their blood. Not metaphorically, but almost literally, in the sense that the river has shaped the metabolism of their daily life for so many generations that existence organized around anything else feels like a kind of malfunction. They stay because the forest is the only geography that makes sense to them. They stay because leaving would mean becoming someone else entirely, and that is a price too high to pay. And they stay, sometimes, because someone has to. Because if the people who know this place best are the ones who abandon it, then what remains behind is not wilderness. It is just emptiness, waiting to be filled by something worse. There is no separation here between the human world and the natural one. The boto, the pink river dolphin, is more than an animal in Amazonian culture. It is a shapeshifter, a seducer, a spirit that moves between the river and the human world with a freedom that humans can only observe and interpret. Children are warned not to swim alone at dusk. Elders speak of encounters with the boto in its human form, appearing at festivals, dressed in white, irresistibly beautiful, with a seriousness that makes clear this is not mythology in the way that word is sometimes used to mean something safely past. It is a living article of belief, active and present. The forest and the river are not scenic backdrops. They are inhabited by forces that command respect, that make demands, that require a specific kind of attention to navigate safely. To live here is to live inside a moral landscape as much as a physical one. The biodiversity is simply beyond ordinary comprehension, and the phrase "beyond comprehension" is not deployed here for rhetorical effect. It is a literal statement about the limits of human cognitive grasp. A single hectare of Amazonian forest may contain more species of tree than exist in all of North America. The river holds more species of fish than the entire Atlantic Ocean. There are insects here that have not yet been named by science, that exist in their thousands and tens of thousands, filling ecological roles that science has not yet described. There are plants whose properties remain unknown to researchers in Manaus and São Paulo and Zurich, but are known precisely and practically to the page, the traditional healer, who has been using them for generations, who learned their application from teachers who learned from theirs, in an unbroken chain of knowledge that reaches back further than any written record. This is not a wilderness. It is a library, the largest, most complex, most irreplaceable library of living knowledge ever assembled on this planet, and significant portions of it are being burned before anyone has had the chance to read what is written there. The rainy season transforms everything, and the transformation is so complete that it requires a fundamental reorientation of the senses. For months, the river rises, not by inches but by meters, sometimes by 10 or 12 or 15 meters, and the forest becomes an ocean. Canoes navigate between treetops. Fish swim through what was, weeks ago, dry ground, feeding on the fruits that fall from the submerged trees in an evolutionary intimacy that has shaped both the fish and the forest over millions of years. Many Amazonian trees depend on fish to disperse their seeds. The fish depend on the fruit for nutrition. Neither, in the deepest sense, could be what it is without the other. Children swim in the flooded forest, ducking between submerged trunks, threading through the underwater geometry of roots and branches, in water the color of black tea stained by tannins from decomposing leaves, water that looks dangerous to the outside eye and is, to the child who was born here, simply home. They do not fight the flood. They have learned over generations to live inside it, to read its rhythms and respond to its logic the way musicians respond to a rhythm section, not by resisting, but by finding the movement that fits. The animals move with the water. Jaguars retreat to higher ground and become more visible on the edges of things. Giant river otters fish the same channels that human fishermen work, with a boldness that can seem like indifference. Caimans sun themselves on floating logs that drift past villages with a slow antediluvian authority. Macaws cross the sky in pairs. They mate for life, a fact that Ribeirinho people note with something that is not quite irony and not quite admiration, but somewhere between the two. Howler monkeys mark the hour of dawn more reliably than any clock, their voices carrying for kilometers through still air, a sound that is not beautiful in the conventional sense, but is so entirely expressive of place that to hear it is to know immediately and completely where you are. The dry season brings the beaches, long white crescents of sand that appear from the retreating water, like a gift that the river delivers on a schedule it has kept for longer than human memory extends. Community life moves to the waterline. Hammocks are strung between the trees at the forest's edge, close enough to the water to catch the breeze that rises off the river in the late afternoon. Fish are smoked and dried in the sun on wooden racks that have been rebuilt in the same spots, season after season, by the same families. Children who have spent months confined to canoes and floating houses run on the sand with a particular kind of joy. The joy of a body doing exactly what it was made to do in exactly the place it belongs. Turtles are protected on their nesting beaches by community guardians who take shifts through the night, watching the tracks in the sand, ensuring that neither poachers nor predators disturb the eggs before they hatch. They do this not because an NGO has paid them to. They do it because they understand, in a way that is felt rather than theorized, that the turtle is not just food. It is continuity. It is the proof that the season will come again. There is a question that outsiders always ask. Why here? Why stay in a place so distant, so demanding, so structurally disconnected from everything that the modern world has decided is necessary for a dignified human life? The honest answer is that the question itself reveals something about the asker. It assumes that the modern world's account of what is necessary is correct. It assumes that distance is a disadvantage rather than a condition. It assumes that what is being endured is a deprivation rather than a choice made from a coherent and deeply held set of values that the questioner simply does not share and has not been required to examine. The answers are not found in logic. They are found in the body, in the specific smell of rain hitting the river just before a storm arrives. A smell so particular and so charged with association that Ribeirinho children who grow up to live in São Paulo or Miami or Lisbon report dreaming of it with a regularity and a vividness that no urban experience ever quite matches. The smell is petrichor and river silt and something green and alive underneath both. And it arrives before the rain is visible, carried ahead on the wind, and people who know it stop what they are doing when it comes, because the storm requires attention. In the sound of the forest at night, a sound that is not one sound but thousands, layered simultaneously, frogs and insects and birds calling in darkness, each species occupying its own acoustic niche in a soundscape so complex and so organized that it functions, in its way, like a kind of music. In the feeling of a river beneath a canoe, that slight give, that living movement beneath the hull, that connection to a current that has been flowing long before you arrived and will be flowing long after you are gone. That reminds the person in the boat that they are not the center of the story, but a participant in something much longer and much larger than themselves. People stay because belonging is not a concept here. It is a physical fact, written into the body through generations of adaptation to this specific light, this specific water, this specific density of air in the rainy season when the humidity is a weight you carry everywhere. The river is not a backdrop to their lives. It is their life, its rhythm, its seasons, their seasons. Its abundance and its anger both accepted as part of the same true thing that cannot be separated into the welcome and the unwelcome without destroying its meaning entirely. The flood is not a disaster. It is the year. The drought is not a failure. It is the other half of the year. The fish that runs thick in March and thin in August is not inconsistent. It is reliable in its inconsistency, and reliability of that kind the kind you have to learn rather than simply receive, creates a different kind of knowledge than anything that comes easily. There is a word in Portuguese, saudade, that describes a longing for something you may never have again, or may never have had, or may be losing even now, while you stand in the middle of it. It is a word that ribeirinhos who have left the Amazon use, sometimes without knowing they are using it, when they talk about the river. And it is a word that those who have stayed use differently, not for what is gone, but for what they can feel slipping, for the fish that are fewer, for the trees that are not growing back, for the children who left and have not come home. Saudade here is not nostalgia. It is an accurate perception of loss, held with a dignity that refuses to become despair. The Amazon is being changed. The pressures upon it are real. The losses already suffered are irreversible in any human timescale, and the future is genuinely uncertain in ways that are not resolved by optimism or good intentions. The deforestation maps do not lie. The mercury readings do not lie. The fish counts do not lie. And yet, and this is the thing that is hardest to explain to someone who has not stood on the bank of a Blackwater river at the moment the sun goes down and watched the color of the water change through every shade between amber and violet and finally dark. And yet, the place itself is still here, still breathing, still holding within it an astonishing, improbable, defiant abundance. The people who live inside it, the ribeirinhos, the indigenous, the communities of the flooded forest, the families whose names have been attached to the same stretch of river for 100 years, carry within them something that no deforestation map can measure and no satellite image can capture. They carry a knowledge of how to exist in relationship with the world, rather than in opposition to it. A knowledge of reciprocity, of taking and returning, of using and protecting, of reading the signs that the non-human world offers to those who are paying attention. A knowledge built over centuries of patient, attentive, deeply human life in one of the most demanding and most generous environments on Earth. This knowledge is not romantic. It is not a solution to climate change or a policy prescription or a brand. It is simply what it is, an accumulation of understanding about how to be in a specific place, earned across generations, held in the bodies and the practices and the stories of people who have never had reason to write it down, because it was always just life. It is knowledge that the world, in its various ongoing crises, is going to need, and it will only be available if the people who hold it are still there to offer it. The river does not stop. The canoe moves on. And somewhere in the vast, breathing, irreplaceable green, in a flooded forest, where the light comes through the water's surface in shifting columns, in a village where someone is smoking fish over a low fire, while their child watches from a hammock, in a stretch of river where a pink dolphin surfaces once and is gone. A child is watching the water and learning everything, not everything that can be written down, not everything that can be explained, everything that matters.